Good morning and welcome to Kramer's Corner with the daily technical update. It is the 16th of October and we need to talk about semiconductors this morning, and we'll start with ASML that came out with some little bit disappointing guidance, so to speak, that really hammered the stock lower by almost 16%, down to support here around 668. Around that level we have some support. We can also see here on the weekly chart how it looks for ASML. If it breaks out below 657, well, which is not unlikely, we can see here on the weekly chart that the RSI is actually below 40 threshold in a negative sentiment. Actually been for quite some time. It tried to bounce back, but it didn't. And if it breaks below 657, well, there's little support here around the 200 weekly moving average, but then we could end up in a situation where we are down around 600. Of course, that also spilled into other semiconductor shares like Nvidia. That also was sold off, testing the 130 level key support here during yesterday's session. If it does close below, well, then we can see some weakness down to around 120. We talked about a little bit yesterday during my special semiconductor presentation, a video, very close to the all-time highs here. So let's see here the next couple of days, what will it bounce back and push a little bit higher. Another one that was really hammered yesterday that we also discussed during the semiconductor presentation was applied material that was just around the cloud resistance here, spiked a little bit above, but then got hammered back down, and we talked about, well, 196, some support, still a little bit above the cloud lower area, and the RSI is still above 40 threshold, meaning that we are still in a little bit of a positive sentiment. So, and that's the key picture for most of the semiconductor shares. And if we're looking at the SOXX index or the semiconductor index / ETF here, we have it here. We also talked about that yesterday. Well, it is still in a bullish trend, but it is struggling, and if it takes out 217.50, well, then it is really in a trouble for the semiconductor industry as a whole. But let's see during the session later today, what will it do? Will it push? Will it bounce back? And will we see it pushing higher next couple of days? It will be a little bit of a struggle for at least some of the names. And of course, the index itself was also affected. Here we have the S&P 500 that actually reached the 200%, which we talked about yesterday. 200% of this little correction here, so let's just delete it. And we actually formed this yesterday. We formed a bearish engulfing-like pattern that could tell us that we will see a little bit of a correction. It is likely to test the lower rising trend line here, but for S&P 500 to really go into a bearish trend, it needs to close below 5,674. And there's no divergence on the RSI, which is still showing positive sentiment, and it will take a lot to change that picture. So I think we'll see a little bit of correction, and then we'll see an uptrend resuming. What will push it higher could of course be a little bit bounce in the semiconductor industries, but also other industries that will do it. Nasdaq was harder hit, of course, testing very close to testing support here at 2041, but to change or reverse the bullish picture, well, 19,622 needs to be broken, and also positive sentiment and no divergence, indicating we are likely to see a push towards all-time highs maybe in a few days. European market was, of course, a hard hit. Here we have the EUROSTOXX 50 that got sold off throughout the session and closed just above support at the 49.43 support here. I think we will see a bouncing a little bit in the Wednesday session, but if it does close below, well, we could see further sell-off down to maybe a little bit of support here, as we can see just around 49.07, and key support here at 48.54. We're still in a bullish trend, but it is struggling for now. It really needs to take out the 5,077 for uptrend to be confirmed. So I will stay on the sideline a little bit if it was me. DAX It was we talked about yesterday that it was stalling a little bit, and we could see a little bit of a correction. So if we add a Fibonacci retracement just to give us an idea what we could see it retrace to, well, possibly down to around maybe down to around 19,187 if we're looking at the Germany CFD, and just clean up a little bit here first, then and add the Fibonacci. And you can do this yourself, of course, and then you're going to see, okay, maybe we should have a little bit of a correction down to around 19,181. It is not unlikely. It has been a nice ride, but maybe only a correction down to 19,354, and then uptrend is set to resume. So we are still in a positive sentiment, a bullish trend. Amsterdam index, of course, got hit hard because ASML is a big component. We also have ASM International, and we have BE Semiconductors that got hit a bit yesterday, and that was driving the market or the index lower through the support at 908. Key support here at 896, a close below that and close below the cloud also. I will actually adjust this a little bit and say, okay, if it does close below that 895 level, well, then we could see a sell-off down to around 878. But if it can crawl back above 909, well, then we could see it's trying to at least move back towards 927. CAC 40 also weak, still key support 74.64, that should be observed. Swiss market also a little bit weak, but not as much, but it got back down below 12,250. And the interesting thing here is that the RSI is still in a negative sentiment. It didn't close above 60 threshold, so maybe we'll see a little bit of weakness in the coming days also for the Swiss market. Euro dollar testing this morning as we speak, more or less, the key support here at 108.80, which is just around the 161.8 projection of this double top like pattern here. We had two tops, and when it broke below this valley here, then there is potential down to around 108, but it's not, I don't think we will get there, but there is potential down, but there's some strong support here. So keep an eye on what's going on here today and tomorrow. Will it actually continue lower, or will it start bouncing, and then we have a different situation? We talked about it yesterday about that it could bounce, but this is a key support. If it starts moving lower below that and also below the 200 moving average, well, then we are looking at 108.40, and there is a risk down to around 108 and 107 and 90. But really keep an eye on what will go on. The RSI is still a negative sentiment. There's no divergence, so we could see that, but I think it will bounce. But it is really hard to say at the moment. We have the euro sterling that has pushed lower, very close to the 83.10. I think we will see it coming lower in the coming weeks and months, towards 82.30, especially if it takes out 83.10 level. The sterling dollar pair, or cable as I usually call it, still above 130. If it starts bouncing towards 131.76, which is a 38.2 retracement, then I think we'll see cable resuming uptrend. Still positive sentiment on the RSI indicating that. Dollar yen, well, it is hovering around this 149.40. It closed above, so it should push higher, but it's really struggling. And I would say again, if it takes out 140.20 to the downside, well, then I will expect it to resume downtrend. So it's really struggling at the moment, but there is room up to 151.85. But it is really struggling at the moment, so I'm not quite so sure that it will be there. So wait for a move in the market. Euro yen not really doing much either. To the weak side, 161 is the key resistance, and 164 is the key. Is the key support, and 164 is the key resistance. So support down here 161 and resistance at 164. That should be observed, and breakout of that. Well, that will tell you about the likely direction. Aussie yen also can't really make its mind up. Range bound between 98 and 100 and 101. Really needs to push higher, but it seems like it's also struggling here. If it takes out 98, downtrend is resuming. Sterling yen, same picture really. 196. We talked about this for so long now, so that is still these level to watch out for. And below 191.75, well, then I think we're looking at 189.50, possibly lower. But if it takes out 196, well, then there is room up to 199.5, 200. But it seems really a struggle at the moment. But positive RSI could indicate that, but it is not convincing. Aussie dollar, as we speak, dipping below the 786 retracement at 66.90. Will it be a break, a real break, or can it bounce here? Will it dipped lower towards 66.40, 66.20 around where we have some support going on at the moment? I will actually adjust this support here to that. So that's what we're looking at. It's really some strong support around these levels here. But also we have the 100 giving some support here. So we could see a bounce if it moves back, or the dollar moves back above 67.60. Well, then the uptrend is likely to resume. And for now, the RSI is actually below the 40 threshold, thereby in negative sentiment, but it needs to close up below. So keep an eye on what's going on during the trading session today. Dollar Canada, we talked about yesterday how stretched it was, and now I think we'll see a correction kicking in that could take it down to around 137, or the 38.2 retracement at 136.78, possibly dipping a little bit lower to the support here, maybe a little bit lower, but I think we'll see a correction. However, it is likely just to be a correction. There's no divergence on the RSI. The RSI is still pointing to higher levels. And when we're talking about divergence, what it is, go find my video. I posted in the playlist educational. You can see how I use the RSI, relative strength indicator, and when we're talking about divergencies and imbalance in the market and so on. There's no imbalance in the market here on dollar Canada at the moment. Sterling Canada spiked above the 786 retracement of this sell-off there. If it starts moving back below the lower rising trend line, well, then we could see a sell-off lower. But for now, I think we will see it pushing a little bit higher, but it's struggling. If we get the RSI back above 60 threshold, then I think we will see Sterling Canada pushing higher. But it is a little bit of a limbo at the moment. EURUSD still in this symmetrical triangle-like pattern here. It really needs to break out of. And if you haven't seen it, or watched the other videos that I've done talking about this, it needs to break out. It dipped below a couple of times, but it really needs to break out. And I will also add a horizontal line here and say, okay, if it breaks out to the bearish side and below 93.30, well, then expect a sell-off down to 92.5, and also I think we'll see it down to around 92, these lows over here. If it breaks out bullish, well, 95 will be the first key resistance towards 96, but the 100 moving average will kind of putting a lid on it. So I still favor the downside, but I need confirmation, and I haven't got it, and then I would wait on the sideline here. The RSI is not giving me much. The dollar Swiss pausing a little bit, and let's see, it was actually above, no, it wasn't above 60 threshold, so still in a negative sentiment, although it is very almost too close to call. If it takes out 85.30 here, the support here, well, then expect further selling, but we should see dollar Swiss at least get up to the 786 retracement, maybe at 86.68, maybe even up to 87, just below here, where we have the 100 moving average coming down. But let's see, it is struggling a bit at the moment. And the dollar index, well, stalling a little bit here at the 161.8 projection of this last phase down here, just around 103 and a change. Could spike a little bit higher to 103.36, but I think we will see a correction lower. It is fairly strong resistance up here. I think we will see a little bit of correction. However, the RSI is positive, no divergence, so we could see it pushing above 103.36, but it will be a little bit of struggle, but it's not unlikely. Gold, and we need to zoom in as usual, is as we speak testing the 786 retracement at 2668, and as we speak it is just above it, just around this level. If it's being rejected sent back, then it could test the low rising trend line there again. But if it could really push up and take out the, I think it will do that. I think it will take out, make a new high. There's no divergence on the RSI. We are in a positive sentiment, so we should see higher levels on gold towards 27.17, 27.36 in this area up here. But it could then build up some divergence because the RSI is really not convincing. So keep your stops tight, and if it takes out the lows from yesterday here at 26.38, then I think we will see a push that could test the 2600 again. On silver, that is a little bit frustrating, and it's very volatile, just really around these levels here, around 31, and now it seems it has made up its mind and trying to push higher. If RSI moves back above 60 threshold, I still think we will see higher silver prices in the coming weeks and months, but we are in a corrective phase, so it can be a little bit frustrating. But if we're looking at the weekly chart, well, we are also here in a bullish trend, but the 32.5 level, that is really a strong resistance for silver. It's backed above a little bit there, but it is really struggling. So we could be caught range bound to try around this 31 to 32 here for quite some time, I would say, and I will actually add the Fibonacci to it, and this is it just to give me a kind of guidance for what's actually going on. We are towards the 61.8 retracement at 31.88. I think it could push higher to the 32.35. If it takes out the lows here from yesterday at 30.75, then we are likely to test these levels down here again around $30. Copper, oops, just need to align it, and it actually did what we talked about yesterday. It dropped to the 61.8 retracement at 432.70, or very close to, at least. It can still dip a little bit lower. We have the 100 pushing it down there, but then we have 55 and the 200 coming up, and RSI is still in a positive sentiment. So if it takes out 432, well, then we could see a correction down to around 420 before a likely rebound. WTI took out its minor support at 71.53 and dipped to test the falling trend line there. We're still in a positive sentiment on the RSI, didn't close below 40 threshold. So key question, will it actually slide lower? If it moves back above 72.40, 41, then I think we will see it pushing towards 75. But it's really frustrating. There's a lot of geopolitics that really can push to either side at the moment. So it is, and there's no clear direction, and sometimes that is frustrating, but that's how it is. Sometimes you have to stay on the sideline. It seems like we are resuming downtrend, but it hasn't been confirmed. But we have. If it moves back below the trend line here, I will say then we are back in a bearish territory and likely pushing lower. You can also see all the moving averages are actually pointing lower. Brent crude oil also below minor support at 75.15. And below the cloud, RSI is still positive, but it could very quickly push to below 40 threshold. If it does, well, then we are looking at $70 levels again. If we move back above 75.15, well, then it could have a little relief rally towards 77.50, but I think it will resume downtrend. The US 10-year Treasury yields, and let's just adjust a little bit here, actually did test the 414 resistance, very close to, and starts at sliding lower, and I think we'll see a correction down to at least a 38.2 retracement at 392, where there's some support. Could dip lower, but I think that it will be the first level. If it breaks below, well, then it could actually drop all the way down to around 386, maybe even 382, but I'm not quite sure about that. But I think 392 should be the first. If it takes out 414, well, then there's potential up to around 425, 430. On the 2-year, well, also we are in a corrective phase here, just below, just around after reaching 4%, and I think we could see a test 380 before a little bit of a bounce. We are in a bullish sentiment, positive sentiment, and there's no divergence indicating we are likely to see higher yields both on the 10-year and the 2-year. All right, that's all for today, a fairly long one, and have a nice day, and talk to you again.